The 911 call came in at 12:47 a.m. on July 15, 2019. 911, what's your emergency? My mother. The male voice fractured with panic. She's not breathing. There's blood, God. There's so much blood. Sir, I need you to stay calm. What's your location? A pause. Then, clearer than the man's hysteria, a woman's voice in the background. Speaking Tagalog, the words soft and final, Tama na. Enough. The dispatcher heard what sounded like a phone clattering to the floor. When police arrived at Westridge Towers, a converted Victorian building in the city's metro district, they found 2 bodies in Unit 4A and 1 woman sitting calmly on a blood-soaked couch. Waiting. Catherine Walsh, 67. Elliot Walsh, 38. Mother and son, dead within minutes of each other. The woman who killed them was Nina Santos, 34 years old, a nurse from the Philippines who lived in a converted storage room down the hall. She made no attempt to run. She didn't claim innocence. When the officers entered, she looked up with eyes that had already accepted what came next. I want a lawyer, she said quietly, and I want to make a statement. To understand how 2 people died that night in a luxury building's hallway, we must first understand how they lived. This is not a simple story of passion turned deadly, nor is it merely a tale of an affair gone wrong. This is a story about invisible women and entitled men, about the American dream sold to those it was designed to destroy, and about the moment when someone who had been erased her entire life decided to become unforgettable. This is the story of Nina Santos, who left everything for nothing. And this is the story of Catherine and Elliot Walsh, who took everything and called it love. Nina Santos was born in August 1984 in Quezon City, Manila, during a summer when the heat made the corrugated metal roofs of the slums sound like drums in the rain. Her father, Roberto Santos, drove a jeepney, those wildly painted passenger vehicles that clogged Manila's arteries like blood cells through a failing heart. Her mother, Maria Delgado Santos, was a seamstress who worked by lamplight long after her children fell asleep, her fingers moving across fabric with the mechanical precision of someone who had surrendered dreams for survival. Nina was the second of 6 children, born into a 2-bedroom apartment where privacy was a luxury no one could afford. She learned early that survival meant being useful. By age 7, she was cooking rice for her younger siblings. By 10, she was helping her mother with piecework, stitching hems on dresses that would be sold in markets she would never shop in. By 12, she understood that education was the only ladder out of poverty, and she climbed it with desperate determination. She studied by streetlight because electricity was rationed. She walked 40 minutes to school each way to save the jeepney fare. She graduated top of her class in high school, earned a scholarship to nursing school, and in 2006, at age 22, became a registered nurse at Manila General Hospital. Her mother wept with pride at the graduation ceremony. Her father told everyone in their neighborhood that his daughter was going to be someone. For 2 years, Nina believed him. She worked at the hospital, saved money, dreamed of eventually opening a small clinic in their district. She dated a man named Carlos Reyes, a bank teller with kind eyes and promises of marriage. They talked about having 2 children, maybe 3. They talked about buying a small house outside the city. They talked about a life that felt, for the first time, possible. Then Nina got pregnant. Carlos disappeared before she started showing. His mother came to Nina's family with 5,000 pesos and instructions to take care of it quietly. Nina's mother, Maria, held her daughter while she cried and said, "We keep the baby. We keep everything." Isabella Santos was born in March 2008, 7 pounds and perfect. Nina held her daughter in the hospital where she worked and made a promise. "You will have better than this. I will give you better than this." But better required money Manila couldn't provide. By 2015, Nina was working double shifts at St. Luke's Medical Center, earning barely enough to support Isabella and contribute to her parents' household. The math was simple and brutal. Stay in Manila, work herself into early death, watch Isabella grow up poor. Or leave. Leave Isabella with her mother, go to America, send money home, build a future from a distance. The recruitment agency made it sound inevitable. $25 an hour in America. Healthcare benefits. Pathway to citizenship. Bring your family over in 5 years. They showed her photos of nurses in clean scrubs, smiling in modern hospitals, living in apartments with real kitchens and bedrooms. What they didn't mention: the agency fees that would eat her first year's wages, the housing assistance that meant referrals to slumlords, the reality that a Filipino nursing degree meant nothing without expensive American certification, the way America consumed immigrant labor and called it opportunity. In December 2015, Nina Santos kissed her 7-year-old daughter goodbye at Manila International Airport. Isabella cried and asked when Mama was coming back. Nina said, "Soon, mahal kayo. Mama will make enough money, and then you'll come to America. We'll have a house with your own bedroom. We'll have everything." She believed it when she said it. She had to believe it or she couldn't have walked through that gate. Nina arrived in America in January 2016, sponsored by Coastal Care Solutions, a nursing agency that contracted with elderly care facilities across the state. The job was in Daly City, a suburban sprawl south of the city, in a facility that smelled like disinfectant and resignation. The residents were wealthy people's parents, warehoused in clean rooms with medication schedules and television sets, and the particular loneliness of being old in America. Nina's actual wage after agency fees and taxes was $17 an hour, not the promised 25. The healthcare benefits had a 6-month waiting period and a deductible she couldn't afford. The pathway to citizenship was a work visa that required employer sponsorship and gave her exactly 0 leverage to complain about conditions. She worked 70 to 80 hours per week, double shifts when someone called out sick, which was often. She bathed elderly patients, changed bedpans, administered medications, documented everything in charts that nobody read. She smiled when residents called her the nice Oriental girl or asked if she spoke English. She accepted Christmas bonuses of $25 and thank you cards that said, "You're like family to us." Every month, she sent $1,200 to Manila, 75% of her income. It paid for Isabella's private school, her grandmother's medications, the family's rent. On video calls, Isabella would show Nina her report card, her new uniform, her growing collection of books. "When are you coming home, Mama?" she asked every time. Nina's answer evolved from soon to maybe next year to, "I don't know, mahal. I'm working on it." In March 2016, Nina moved into Westridge Towers, a building in the Metro District that had once been a single-family Victorian mansion and was now a 7-unit warren of illegal conversions. Her unit, 4B, had been a storage room. It was 120 square feet. It had a window 18 inches wide that looked onto an airshaft. She shared a bathroom with 2 other tenants. The lease prohibited cooking, but there was nowhere else to prepare food. So she hid a hot plate in her closet and lived in fear of inspections. The rent was $1,100 per month. Illegal, exploitative, and more than she could afford. But every other option was worse. Rooms in basements, shared spaces with 5 other people, buildings in neighborhoods where women like Nina disappeared and nobody looked for them. Unit 4B became her entire world. A mattress on the floor, plastic bins for clothes, one photo of Isabella taped to the wall above a makeshift shelf. The hot plate hidden in the closet, pulled out at midnight to cook adobo that filled the tiny space with the smell of home and made her cry because Isabella should be there to eat it. By 2019, Nina Santos had been in America for 3 years. She was 34 years old. She had gained 20 pounds from stress and fast food eaten in her car between shifts. She had started smoking, not because she liked it, but because 10 minutes standing on the fire escape was the only rebellion her life allowed. She spoke to Isabella on video calls and watched her daughter grow from 7 to 11 without her. Watched her childhood disappear into pixels and promises that felt increasingly impossible to keep. The math had become clear. She would never make enough money to bring Isabella to America. The immigration system was designed to keep families separated, to extract labor without granting permanence. Nina Santos had sacrificed motherhood for survival, and survival was killing her anyway. Late at night, alone in her converted storage room, Nina would lie on her mattress and calculate the years. If she worked this hard for 10 more years, Isabella would be 21. An adult. Someone who had grown up without a mother. If she went back to Manila now, she would return with nothing. No savings, no house, no justification for the years of absence. She was trapped in a life she had chosen believing it was temporary, and it had become permanent. The American dream had revealed itself as a machine designed to consume people like her and produce profit for people like her landlord. Her landlord was Catherine Margaret Walsh, and she lived in Unit 4A with her son, Elliot. Catherine Walsh was born in County Cork, Ireland, in 1951, during a decade when Irish families still fled poverty for America's promised prosperity. Her parents immigrated when she was 8 years old, settling in a Boston neighborhood where Irish accents were common and poverty was generational. Her father worked in a factory. Her mother cleaned houses for wealthy families in Beacon Hill, coming home with stories about marble bathrooms and libraries full of books nobody read. Young Catherine absorbed 2 lessons from her mother's stories. Wealth was arbitrary, and dignity was not. She watched her mother scrub other people's toilets and vowed that her children would never be servants. She would marry well. She would build something. She would climb. In 1975, at age 24, Catherine married Patrick Walsh, a postal supervisor whose steady government job and benefits represented everything her parents had worked toward. Patrick was 15 years older, emotionally distant, and content with mediocrity. But he was stable, and stability was a currency Catherine understood. Their son, Elliot James Walsh, was born in May 1981. He was Catherine's only child. A difficult pregnancy had made subsequent children impossible, and he became the repository of all her frustrated ambitions. Elliot was praised for being special before he did anything to earn it. He was protected from consequences before he understood what consequences were. Every failure was someone else's fault. Every mediocrity was secret genius awaiting recognition. Patrick died in 2003 of a heart attack, leaving Catherine with a postal pension and $280,000 in life insurance. In 2004, she invested everything in Westridge Towers, a Victorian building in the Metro District that was zoned for residential use but vague enough about occupancy limits that creative subdivision was possible. Catherine converted the building into 7 units, some legal, most not. She targeted vulnerable tenants, immigrants without documentation, low-wage workers desperate for housing, people who couldn't complain about violations because complaining meant eviction. She charged 40% above market rate and called it providing opportunity. Unit 4A, the largest apartment, she kept for herself and Elliot. The other units she rented to those people. Her term for anyone whose skin was darker than hers and whose English carried an accent. She told herself she wasn't racist. She rented to them, didn't she? She gave them homes when nobody else would. If she profited from their desperation, well, that was just good business. By 2019, Catherine Walsh was 67 years old and had spent 15 years as a landlord. She saw herself as a self-made woman who had pulled herself up from immigrant poverty through hard work and smart investments. She didn't see the contradiction in exploiting other immigrants. She didn't see that she had become exactly the kind of person her mother had cleaned for. Someone who profited from other people's labor while looking down on them for performing it. Her son, Elliot, was 38 years old and had never held a job for longer than 18 months. He had graduated from a liberal arts college in 2004 with a degree in film and photography and had spent the subsequent 15 years finding his voice. He talked constantly about the screenplay he was writing, the novel he was revising, the photography portfolio he was preparing to show galleries. None of it ever materialized. In 2014, Elliot had married Jessica Chun, a woman who worked in tech project management and earned $185,000 a year. Jessica had seen in Elliot what many women see in underachieving men: potential. She believed she could nurture his artistic soul, provide stability while he created, be the practical partner to his creative genius. Within a year, she realized she had married a child. Elliot contributed nothing financially. He spent his days smoking marijuana and playing video games. He spent his nights on his mother's couch, complaining about how Jessica didn't understand him. By 2018, Jessica was having an affair with her director and planning a divorce that would leave Elliot with nothing. Catherine encouraged the divorce. Jessica was Asian, successful, and insufficiently deferential. She wasn't good enough for Elliot. Nobody was good enough for Catherine's son except Catherine herself. By February 2019, Elliot Walsh was a 38-year-old man living between his wife's condo and his mother's apartment, working on projects that would never be finished, sustained by his mother's belief in his specialness and his wife's salary. He was drowning in slow motion, and he knew it. That's when he noticed Nina Santos on the fire escape, smoking cigarettes at 11 o'clock at night, her exhaustion visible in the slope of her shoulders. The first time Elliot Walsh spoke to Nina Santos, it was February 14, 2019, Valentine's Day, though neither of them acknowledged it. Nina was on the fire escape, her illegal cigarette break between video call with Isabella and the sleep she wouldn't get enough of before her morning shift. Elliot emerged from the shadows smelling like whiskey and weed, his own cigarette already lit. "You're in for B, right?" he asked, his voice carrying the careful enunciation of someone who was drunk but trying to hide it. Nina nodded, wary. She knew who he was, the landlord's son, the man who lived with his mother despite being well into adulthood. She'd seen him in the hallways, always at odd hours, always with the look of someone trying to appear busy while doing nothing. "I'm Elliot, Catherine's son." He leaned against the railing, close enough that Nina could smell the alcohol. "You work nights." "Days and nights," Nina said, not elaborating. She had learned that the less she shared with people who had power over her housing, the safer she was. "That's brutal," Elliot said, and something in his voice sounded genuine. "What do you do?" "Elderly care. I'm a nurse." "From the Philippines?" Nina stiffened slightly. That question always felt like the beginning of something, not always bad, but always othering. "Yes. Must be hard," Elliot said. "Being so far from home." It was such a simple observation, but Nina felt something crack inside her. Nobody had acknowledged the hardness in months. Her coworkers didn't ask about her life. Her employers saw her as labor. Her family in Manila needed her to be strong. This stranger, this white man who lived with his mother, was the first person in recent memory to suggest that her life might be difficult. "Yes," she said quietly. "It's very hard." They stood in silence for a moment, smoking. The city hummed below them. Traffic and sirens and the ambient noise of millions of people living compressed lives. "I see you out here a lot," Elliot said. "Late nights. You look tired." "I am tired." "What brought you here?" "To America?" Nina hesitated, then decided there was no harm in honesty. "My daughter. I have a daughter in Manila. She's 11 now. I left when she was 7. I thought I could make enough money to bring her here, give her better opportunities." She laughed bitterly. 3 years later, I'm living in a storage closet and she's growing up without me." Elliot turned to look at her fully. "That's incredibly sad." "It's incredibly stupid," Nina corrected. "I believed in something that doesn't exist. The American dream? Any dream where I'm the person who gets saved instead of the person who does the saving." Something shifted in Elliot's expression, recognition, maybe, or the kinship of people who had both abandoned their better selves. "I know what you mean," he said. "I'm 38, living with my mother, working on projects that will never be finished. My wife tolerates me because she makes enough money that my failure doesn't matter. I'm basically a very expensive pet." Nina almost smiled. "At least you have a wife with money. I have a daughter with hope, and I'm destroying it." "Then we're both failures," Elliot said, raising his cigarette in a mock toast. "Cheers to that." They met on the fire escape 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. The conversations evolved from surface observations to something deeper. Elliot talking about his creative paralysis, Nina talking about the particular loneliness of sending money home while living in poverty. Neither was looking for romance. Both were looking for someone who understood that their lives had become traps of their own construction. On March 1, 2019, Nina's sink backed up, flooding her storage room with water that threatened everything she owned. She called Catherine, who quoted $200 for an emergency plumber. Nina didn't have $200. She had $47 until her next paycheck, and most of that was already allocated to Isabella's school fees. She was standing in the hallway, trying not to cry, when Elliot appeared. "I heard the commotion," he said, looking at the water seeping under her door. "My mother charging you for that? $200 for a plumber. That's insane. I can fix it. I know basic plumbing." He didn't know basic plumbing. But Nina was desperate, and Elliot wanted to be useful for the first time in months. They entered Unit 4B together, and Elliot saw how Nina lived. The mattress on the floor, the plastic bins that served as furniture, the single photo of a beautiful child taped to the wall, the hot plate hidden poorly in the closet, the window that barely qualified as a window, the entire architecture of desperation made visible. "Jesus Christ," Elliot said softly. "She charges you how much for this?" $1,100 a month. For a storage closet? For a place where I won't be raped or robbed. There are worse rooms for less money. But they're worse. Elliot knelt beside the sink, opened the cabinet underneath, and stared at pipes he didn't understand. He fiddled with connections, made the leak worse, apologized, tried again. Nina sat on her mattress, watching him, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. The presence of someone trying, however incompetently, to help her. After 40 minutes, Elliot managed to tighten the connection enough that the leak slowed to a drip. They would need to wait for it to dry before seeing if it held. They sat on the floor, their backs against the wall, surrounded by Nina's meager possessions. "I left my daughter to live in a closet," Nina said suddenly. "I work 80 hours a week. I send almost everything home. And I live in a fucking closet." "I'm 38 and live with my mother," Elliot replied. "I tell people I'm working on art. I'm not. I'm just afraid of trying and failing definitively. At least you have the luxury of fear. I have the necessity of survival. Then we're both trapped." Nina turned to look at him. "Yes, we are." That's when he kissed her. It was impulsive, probably inappropriate, definitely complicated. Nina should have stopped him. He was married. He was her landlord's son. This would end badly. She kissed him back anyway. The affair began that night and established a pattern within a week. Jessica traveled Monday through Thursday for work, or so she claimed. Catherine took sleeping pills at 10 p.m. and slept through anything short of fire alarms. The building was full of people too exhausted to notice anything beyond their own survival. In Unit 4B, Elliot and Nina created a world that didn't exist outside those walls. Elliot brought cheap wine he couldn't afford. Nina cooked adobo on her illegal hot plate, filling the room with the smell of garlic and vinegar and home. They had sex on her floor mattress with the desperate intensity of people who knew they were stealing borrowed time from lives that would destroy them. Afterward, they talked. Elliot told her about the screenplay he'd been writing for 11 years, the novel he revised endlessly without ever finishing, the photography portfolio that was always almost ready to show galleries. Nina told him about Isabella, how smart she was, how she wanted to be a doctor, how she asked every week when Mama was coming home. "I'm going to leave Jessica," Elliot said one night in late March, his fingers tracing the C-section scar Nina usually hid under her clothes. "I've been thinking about it for a while. This just makes it clear. Don't say things you don't mean." "I mean it. We'll get our own place. You can bring Isabella here. I've been talking to a gallery in Oakland. They're interested in my work. We'll build something real." Nina wanted to believe him. God. She wanted to believe that someone would save her from this life of double shifts and remittances and guilt that tasted like copper. She wanted to believe that sacrifice would finally be rewarded, that 3 years of absence from her daughter's life would be justified by the future they would build. "Okay," she whispered into the darkness. "Okay." What Nina didn't know, Catherine had been watching since the first kiss. She had a master key to every unit in the building. She had been entering Unit 4B during Nina's night shifts, photographing immigration documents, reading the journal Nina kept in Tagalog, documenting evidence of violations. What Elliot didn't know, Jessica wasn't traveling for work. She'd been having an affair with her director, Marcus Chin, for 8 months. She'd hired a private investigator to document Elliot's infidelity. She was building a divorce case that would leave him with nothing. What neither of them knew. Catherine had been planning Nina's destruction from the moment she discovered the affair. Not to punish Elliot, he was her son, and sons were always victims of circumstance, but to eliminate the immigrant woman who had seduced him. By April 2019, 3 people were surveilling an affair that only 2 people knew existed. Nina believed she had found rescue. Elliot believed he had found purpose. Catherine believed she was protecting her son. All of them were wrong. The trap was tightening, and nobody saw the walls closing in. The first strike came on June 1, 2019. Nina kept her tips in a plain white envelope hidden beneath her mattress. $100 bills folded with singles. The physical manifestation of exhausting work translated into paper currency. She had been saving for 3 months, accumulating $340 that she planned to send to Manila for Isabella's school supplies and her grandmother's prescription medications. The envelope disappeared. Nina tore apart her room looking for it. She checked every pocket, every plastic bin, every fold of blanket. She knew exactly where she had placed it the night before. Tucked between the mattress and the floor, in the corner farthest from the door. It was gone. Only one person had access to her room when she wasn't there. Catherine Walsh had master keys to every unit in the building. Nina had seen her entering other tenants' apartments, always with some excuse about maintenance or inspections. But there was no proof. No cameras in the hallway. No witnesses. Just the sick certainty that her landlord had stolen from her. She went to the police the next morning, exhausted from her night shift but determined to file a report. The precinct was a fluorescent-lit maze of bureaucratic indifference. The officer who took her report was a young man with tired eyes who had clearly heard 1,000 similar stories and believed none of them. "Are you sure you didn't misplace it? Maybe you spent it and forgot." His tone was polite but dismissive, already categorizing her complaint as waste of his time. "I didn't spend it. I know exactly where it was. Someone with a key to my apartment took it." "Do you have any evidence? Security footage, witnesses, anything concrete?" Nina had nothing. No cameras in the hallway. No witnesses to the theft. Just her certainty and her empty envelope. "Unfortunately, ma'am, without evidence, there's not much we can do. Could have been anyone in the building. Could have fallen out when you were cleaning. I'll file the report, but don't expect much to come of it." Nina left the police station understanding that the law was not designed to protect people like her. $340, 2 weeks of work, a month of her daughter's expenses. Simply gone. Erased. As if her labor, her sacrifice, her careful saving meant nothing. She couldn't tell her mother what happened. Couldn't explain that the money wasn't coming this month. Instead, she borrowed from another Filipina nurse at work, a woman named Maricel who understood without asking too many questions. Maricel had been in America for 7 years, sent money to 3 children in Cebu, and knew the particular shame of needing help when you were supposed to be the help. "Pay me back when you can," Maricel said, handing over $300 in cash. "We take care of each other. Nobody else will." When Nina told Elliot that night, sitting on her mattress in Unit 4B while he drank the cheap wine he'd brought, he was sympathetic but useless. "That's terrible. Did you check everywhere? Maybe it fell behind something?" "It didn't fall, Elliot. Someone took it." "Who would take it?" "Your mother has keys to my room." Elliot laughed. Not cruelly, but with the comfortable disbelief of someone who had never had to question his mother's character. "My mother wouldn't steal from you. She's a lot of things, but she's not a thief." "Then who?" "The other tenants don't have master keys. Only Catherine does. So do the maintenance people." Could have been anyone. Nina dropped it. She couldn't afford to push him away. Not when he was still promising to leave Jessica, still talking about their future together, still the only good thing in her increasingly catastrophic life. But she filed away his refusal to even consider his mother's guilt as evidence of something she was beginning to understand. Elliot Walsh would always choose his mother over her. 1 week later, on June 8th, Nina found her work uniform in the building's dumpster. Both sets, the only 2 she owned, had been systematically destroyed. Someone had taken scissors to them, cutting through the fabric in deliberate slashes that made the garments unwearable. The destruction was precise, methodical, personal. She pulled the ruined uniforms from the garbage, fabric hanging in strips, and felt rage so pure it made her hands shake. This wasn't random. This wasn't accident. Someone was targeting her specifically, cruelly, with the intent to hurt. The navy blue scrubs hung from her hands like flags of surrender. She stood in the alley behind Westridge Towers, surrounded by the smell of rotting food and urine, holding the destroyed symbols of her professional identity, and understood that she was in a war she hadn't known she was fighting. New uniforms cost $65 each. Money she didn't have. Money she would have to borrow again, adding to debt that was becoming insurmountable. She wore scrubs from a thrift store to her next shift. Mismatched colors, obviously not regulation, the uniform of someone who couldn't afford proper equipment. Her supervisor noticed immediately. "Ms. Santos, is there a reason you're not in proper uniform?" Nina stood in the hallway of the care facility, surrounded by the chemical smell of industrial cleaning products and the ambient sounds of elderly patients calling for help, and tried to explain without sounding paranoid or crazy. "Mine were damaged. I'm waiting for replacements." "Damaged how?" "An accident. I'm very sorry. It won't happen again." The supervisor, a white woman named Patricia who had worked at Coastal Care Solutions for 15 years and treated immigrant nurses like interchangeable parts in a machine, made a note in her file. Another mark against Nina Santos in a system that was always looking for reasons to eliminate liability. See that it doesn't. Proper uniform is mandatory. No exceptions. Nina ordered new uniforms online, using money she had borrowed from Maricel, and waited for them to arrive while wearing thrift store scrubs that marked her as someone who couldn't maintain professional standards. On June 15th, Coastal Care Solutions received an anonymous phone call. The voice was female, older, with an accent that suggested education and authority. Not quite American, but not immigrant either. The slightly Irish lilt that Catherine Walsh had never quite lost despite 50 years in America. The caller claimed that Nina Santos had been stealing medications from elderly patients, falsifying medical records to cover the thefts, and working unauthorized overtime to pad her paychecks. The accusations were specific enough to require investigation, vague enough to be impossible to definitively disprove. The facility launched an immediate inquiry. Nina's locker was searched in front of her coworkers during the lunch break, her belongings spread across the break room table while everyone watched. Her time cards were audited going back 6 months, every punch-in and punch-out examined for irregularities. Patients were interviewed about their interactions with her, asked leading questions about whether they had noticed medications going missing or records being altered. The humiliation was comprehensive and public. Co-workers who had been friendly became distant, avoiding her in hallways, eating lunch at different tables. The investigation itself was the punishment, even though they found nothing. Nina had never stolen anything, never falsified a record, never worked a minute of unauthorized time. She was meticulous about documentation precisely because she knew that immigrant nurses were always under more scrutiny than their American counterparts. But the investigation destroyed her reputation anyway. When it concluded 2 weeks later with no evidence of wrongdoing, there was no apology. No acknowledgement that false accusations had consequences. Just a notation in her file that she had been cleared of allegations, and a supervisor who watched her constantly, waiting for her to make a mistake that would justify termination. Nina knew who had made the call. The voice description matched Catherine Walsh perfectly. Older woman, educated accent, specific knowledge of Nina's work situation. But again, there was no proof. Just mounting evidence that someone was systematically trying to destroy her life. "My mother wouldn't do that," Elliot said when Nina confronted him on the fire escape, both of them smoking in the midnight darkness. "Why would she? She doesn't even know where you work. I filled out employment verification forms when I moved in. She has all my information, employer name, address, supervisor contact. Everything she would need to make that call. You're being paranoid. I'm being targeted, Elliot. Can't you see that? The stolen money, the destroyed uniforms, the call to my work. It's all connected. Your mother is trying to drive me out." "By who?" Some random person with a grudge? It doesn't make sense. Nina looked at the man she had been sleeping with for 3 months, the man who had promised to build a life with her, and saw clearly that he would never believe his mother was capable of cruelty. Catherine was his protector, his enabler, his excuse for every failure. He couldn't see her clearly because his entire identity depended on not seeing her. The final blow came on June 20th. Immigration and Customs Enforcement received a detailed anonymous report about Nina Santos, typed on official-looking letterhead claiming to be from a Citizens Immigration Awareness Group. The report claimed she was living in an illegal apartment, using fraudulent documentation to maintain her work visa, and engaged in prostitution to supplement her income. It included specific details about Unit 4B's violations, the illegal hot plate, the subdivided space that didn't meet minimum square footage requirements, the lack of proper permits for residential conversion. It also included photographs of Nina entering and exiting the building at odd hours, 11 p.m., midnight, 2 a.m., the schedule of a night shift nurse presented as evidence of sex work. The source was listed as a concerned citizen. The level of detail suggested intimate knowledge of Nina's living situation. The photographs could only have been taken by someone with regular access to the building, someone who had been watching her, documenting her movements, building a case. On June 22nd, at 7 in the morning, Nina returned from a night shift to find ICE agents waiting at Westridge Towers with a warrant. There were 4 of them. 2 men, 2 women, all wearing body armor and carrying weapons as if they expected her to be dangerous. Neighbors watched from windows and doorways as federal agents searched the apartment of the Filipino nurse in 4B. They searched Unit 4B thoroughly, photographing the illegal hot plate, measuring the inadequate square footage, examining her immigration documents with the presumption of guilt. They questioned her about where she worked, how much she earned, where the money went. They asked if she had romantic relationships with American citizens. They asked if she had ever engaged in sex work. Catherine Walsh stood in the hallway, playing the shocked landlord with Oscar-worthy conviction. "Officers, I had no idea the unit was being used this way." The tenant signed a lease agreeing to all building codes. "If she's been violating terms, I'll certainly cooperate with your investigation." Nina stood in the hallway in her scrubs, still smelling like the antiseptic and old age of the care facility, watching federal agents photograph her life. They confiscated her passport. They served her with a notice of investigation. They told her a hearing was scheduled for August 10, 2019. The potential outcomes were explained in bureaucratic language that barely concealed the threat: deportation, permanent ban from re-entry, separation from any path to bringing Isabella to America. The agent who explained this to her was a woman in her 40s who had clearly delivered this speech hundreds of times and felt nothing. After the agents left, Nina sat on her mattress and understood with absolute clarity that she was being erased. Catherine Walsh was using every system available, police, employment, immigration, to eliminate her. And there was nothing Nina could do about it because the systems were designed to believe landlords over tenants, citizens over immigrants, white women over brown ones. She called Elliot, hysterical for the first time since the affair began. He came to Unit 4B within 20 minutes, held her while she cried, made promises that sounded increasingly hollow. "I'll help. We'll fight this together. I'll hire a lawyer. We'll get through this. A lawyer costs $5,000 minimum. I don't have $5,000. I don't have $500. I'll get the money." "From where? You don't work." "I'll ask Jessica." Nina pulled away from him, staring at his face in the dim light of her storage room. "Your wife? You're going to ask your wife for money to help your mistress fight a deportation case? I'll figure something out. Just don't panic. This is probably routine. They investigate lots of people. Most of them end up fine. Elliot, your mother called ICE. You know that, right? She's the only person with access to all this information. My apartment, my work, my schedule, everything. That's insane. My mother wouldn't do that. Your mother is doing everything she can to destroy me because I'm sleeping with you. You don't know that. I know exactly that. But Elliot didn't hire a lawyer. He asked Jessica for money, and she refused. He told Nina to just wait it out and see what happens at the hearing. He was 38 years old and still believed that problems solved themselves if you ignored them long enough. Nina began to understand that Elliot Walsh would not save her. Could not save her. He was a child playing at adulthood, making promises he had no capacity to keep. She had left her daughter, destroyed her own life, and bet everything on a man who had nothing to offer but fantasy. By early July, Nina Santos was being evicted, investigated by ICE, professionally compromised at work, and financially devastated. She had $47 to her name and $300 in debt to Maricel. Her work visa expired in December. Her ICE hearing was in August. Her daughter kept video calling from Manila, asking when Mama was coming home, when they would finally be together. And the man who had promised to build a life with her was sleeping in his mother's apartment, smoking marijuana, and revising a novel he would never finish. The trap had closed completely. Nina had three choices: accept Catherine's inevitable offer to leave quietly, fight a system designed to destroy her, or do something that would make her unforgettable. She hadn't decided which option to choose. Not yet, but midnight was approaching, and Nina Santos was learning that sometimes the only way to become visible was to become unforgettable. July 5, 2019. Jessica Chun came home 3 days early from her supposed business trip to find Elliot exiting Unit 4B at 11:47 p.m. She had been tipped off by Catherine, who had called her daughter-in-law with carefully constructed concern. "Jessica, dear, I think you should come home. I'm worried about Elliot. He's been acting strangely." Jessica stood in the hallway of Westridge Towers, still wearing her business casual travel clothes, and watched her husband emerge from the storage room turned apartment of the Filipino nurse who lived down the hall. His hair was disheveled. His shirt was buttoned wrong. He smelled like sex and cheap wine. Catherine appeared in her doorway, watching the confrontation with an expression that might have been satisfaction. Nina emerged behind Elliot, realizing too late that she had walked into an ambush. "You're fucking the building, help?" Jessica's voice was controlled, but her fury was incandescent. "Really, Elliot? This is what you've been doing while I support you." "Jessica, I can explain. You're fucking a Filipino maid? You couldn't even cheat up? You had to cheat down." Nina stood in her doorway, wearing sweatpants and a tank top, barefoot and humiliated. Jessica's rage was directed at her with the particular viciousness that women reserve for other women when men fail them. "She's not a maid," Elliot said weakly. "She's a nurse. She wipes old people's asses for $16 an hour and lives in a storage closet. She's help, Elliot. She saw a pathetic white man and a green card opportunity, and you were stupid enough to fall for it." Nina felt the words like physical blows. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that she had never asked Elliot for anything, had never wanted his help with immigration, had simply wanted someone to see her as human. But Jessica wasn't interested in truth. She was interested in punishment. "Mrs. Chun," Catherine interjected smoothly, "I apologize for my son's behavior. I had no idea this was happening in my building. As the property owner, I take responsibility for maintaining standards. Don't apologize to me, Mrs. Walsh. You've been nothing but kind. It's this woman who's been taking advantage." Catherine turned to Nina with a performance of disappointed authority. "Ms. Santos, I'm afraid I have to inform you that I'm filing eviction proceedings. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." Nina looked between the three of them. Jessica's righteous fury, Catherine's calculated coldness, Elliot's pathetic silence, and understood that this had been choreographed. Catherine had called Jessica, had timed the confrontation, had positioned herself as the reasonable landlord dealing with a problematic tenant. "Elliot," Jessica said, her voice shifting from rage to command, "come upstairs. Now." Elliot looked at Nina. For one brief moment, she thought he might choose her, might defend her, might show some fragment of the man who had promised to leave his wife and build a life together. Instead, he followed Jessica toward the stairs. Nina watched him go, watched him choose the easier path, watched him abandon her without a word of defense or explanation. The door to Unit 4A closed. She was alone in the hallway with Catherine. 30 days, Catherine repeated. I'll have the formal notice delivered tomorrow. Nina went back into Unit 4B and sat on her mattress, staring at Isabella's photo. She had left her daughter for this, had worked herself to exhaustion for this, had believed in rescue and received disposal. For the next week, Elliot didn't answer her calls. His text responses were brief and useless. Need time to think. This is complicated. I'm sorry. Jessica filed for divorce on July 7th. The terms were brutal. She kept the condo, Elliot got nothing. The prenuptial agreement she had insisted on before marriage proved she had never really trusted him. Her lawyer demanded psychiatric evaluation, claiming Elliot was mentally unstable and prone to manipulation by predatory women. Elliot moved back to Catherine's apartment full-time. His mother welcomed him home with the satisfaction of someone whose prophecy had been fulfilled. Jessica was never right for you. That Filipino girl caused all this trouble. But you're home now. We'll protect you. On July 12th at midnight, Nina found Elliot on the fire escape. He was drunk, smoking, crying quietly into the darkness. She had come out for her own cigarette and stopped when she saw him. I'm sorry, he said when he noticed her. God, Nina, I'm so sorry. She sat down beside him, maintaining distance. What are you sorry for? Everything. Jessica's taking everything. The condo, the car. Her lawyer is claiming I need psychiatric help. She's going to destroy me. You're leaving me, Nina said. Not a question. A statement of fact. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, Elliot. Not me. Not people like me. I'm trapped. My mother. My wife. This whole fucking city. I'm trapped. Nina felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart breaking that had happened weeks ago. This was something deeper. The final collapse of the belief that any of this had meaning. I left my daughter, she said quietly. Do you understand that? I left my 7-year-old daughter in Manila because I thought I could build something better here. I work 70 hours a week. I live in a storage closet. I send every penny home. And I let myself believe that I know. You don't know anything, Elliot. You're a 40-year-old child playing artist while women clean up your messes. You told me you'd leave Jessica. You said we'd build something real. I wanted to believe it too. I don't care what you wanted. I care what you promised. Elliot took a long drag on his cigarette. What do you want me to say? That I'm a piece of shit? I'm a piece of shit. That I used you? I used you. That I'll never leave my mother or stand up to Jessica or actually do anything with my life. You're right. You're absolutely right about everything. That doesn't help me. I know. Nothing helps you. You're fucked. And it's partially my fault. And I'm sorry, but sorry doesn't fix anything. Nina stood up. No, it doesn't. She went back inside, leaving Elliot to his tears and his self-pity. Inside Unit 4B, she sat on her mattress and felt the walls closing in. The eviction notice would arrive tomorrow. The ICE hearing was in 4 weeks. Her work visa expired in 5 months. Every system was designed to eliminate her. The next morning, Catherine knocked on her door. She was holding 2 cups of coffee, a gesture so out of character that Nina immediately knew something terrible was coming. May I come in? They sat on opposite ends of the mattress. Catherine looked around the tiny room with undisguised disgust, her expression making clear what she thought of people who lived this way. I'm not an unreasonable woman, Catherine began. I understand that my son can be persuasive, charming even to women who don't know better. What do you want, Mrs. Walsh? I want you to understand something about Elliot. He's done this before. There was a girl in college. She got pregnant. He panicked. I handled it, paid her to go away. There was a woman in Portland when he was finding himself. Sarah something. She fell in love with him. He left her when things got complicated. She tried to kill herself. Took pills. She survived. But barely. Nina's blood went cold. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm giving you a choice. Leave quietly. I'll drop the eviction. I'll call ICE and correct the information I provided. I'll even help you find another room somewhere else in the city. I'll give you $2,000 for moving expenses. Or, or stay, and let Elliot drag you down with him. Jessica's lawyers will paint you as a predator who seduced a mentally unstable married man. They'll use your immigration status against you. They'll make sure you get deported and never see your daughter again. Nina stared at her landlord. You called IC. You stole my money. You destroyed my uniforms. You called my work. All of it was you. Catherine didn't deny it. I protect my son, even from himself. He's a grown man. He's my child. And you're an obstacle. An obstacle, Nina repeated softly. You people come here thinking you can take whatever you want. My parents came here legally. They worked. They earned their place. You're just looking for shortcuts. Seduce a white man, get a green card, bring the whole family over. It's a pattern. There it was. The racism that had been lurking beneath every interaction, finally stated plainly. Nina wasn't a person to Catherine Walsh. She was a category, a threat, problem to be eliminated. I have 24 hours to decide? Nina asked. Take until tomorrow night. But understand, if you stay, I will destroy you. I have resources, connections, and time. You have nothing. After Catherine left, Nina sat alone in Unit 4B and made a decision. Not to leave. Not to accept disposal. Not to disappear quietly into the machinery designed to consume people like her. She would confront them. Both of them. She would record everything. She would gather evidence of the harassment, the promises, the systematic destruction of her life. And she would leverage it for enough money to fight ICE, to bring Isabella to America, to finally build the life she had sacrificed everything for. She didn't plan murder. Not yet. She planned confrontation, documentation, leverage. But midnight was approaching, and Nina Santos was done being erased. July 14, 2019, 11:47 p.m. Nina Santos stood outside Unit 4A with her phone in her pocket, set to record. She had spent the past 24 hours researching tenant rights, discrimination law, and immigration advocacy organizations. She had found lawyers who took cases on contingency, activists who documented landlord abuse, journalists who covered immigrant exploitation stories. The plan was simple. Confront Catherine and Elliot together. Get them to admit on recording that Catherine had called ICE, stolen her money, destroyed her property. Get Elliot to admit his promises were lies, that his mother had orchestrated Nina's destruction. Use the recordings to negotiate a settlement. $50,000, enough to fight the deportation case and bring Isabella to America. It wasn't extortion. It was compensation for damages. It was leverage. It was the only weapon Nina had left. She knocked on the door. Catherine answered, suspicious. It's almost midnight, Ms. Santos. We need to talk. All three of us. You, me, and Elliot. My son isn't here. Then call him. This is about his future. And yours. Something in Nina's tone must have conveyed finality, because Catherine stepped aside. Wait in the living room. I'll see if he's available. Inside Unit 4A, Nina was struck by how the apartment functioned as a shrine to Elliot's childhood. The walls were covered with school photos showing a gap-toothed boy in various stages of awkward adolescence. Shelves displayed participation trophies from sports he'd quit and academic competitions he'd lost. Framed art projects, mediocre watercolors, and macaroni sculptures were arranged like gallery pieces. Every surface celebrated potential that had never materialized into achievement. This was Catherine's museum of denial, physical evidence that her son was special despite all reality suggesting otherwise. A 38-year-old man still living inside his mother's fantasy of who he might have been. Catherine returned from her bedroom. He's at a bar nearby. He'll be here in 10 minutes. Would you like to tell me what this is about? I'd rather wait until he arrives. They sat in hostile silence. Catherine in her armchair, Nina on the edge of the couch, both women waiting for the man who had destroyed one of them and disappointed the other. Elliot arrived 12 minutes later, smelling like whiskey and defeat. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shirt wrinkled. He looked at Nina with something between guilt and resentment. What's this about? He asked, not sitting down. Sit down, Elliot. Nina said quietly. We're going to have an honest conversation for once. He sat on the opposite end of the couch from Nina, as far from her as possible while remaining in the same room. Catherine watched from her chair, alert and calculating. Nina's phone was recording in her pocket. Everything that happened next would be documented. Tell your mother what you promised me, Nina began. Nina, don't do this. Tell her you said you'd leave Jessica, that we'd get our own place, that you'd help me bring Isabella here, that you loved me. Catherine's laugh was like ice cracking. He tells everyone that. It's his favorite fantasy. The grand romantic gesture he never actually makes. I meant it, Elliot said weakly. Did you? Nina pulled out her phone, stopped the recording she just started, and opened her voice memos. She played one from late April. Elliot's voice slurred with whine. Jessica means nothing to me. She's just a paycheck. You're real, Nina. The only real thing in my life. I'm going to leave her. We'll get married. I'll help you bring your daughter here. My mother will understand once she meets Isabella. We'll be a real family. Catherine's face darkened as she listened to her son's promises. Nina played another recording. This one from May. I love you. I've never said that to anyone and meant it. Not to Jessica, not to anyone before her. But with you, it's real. You see me. Not my failures, not my mother's disappointment. Just me. She played a third. The gallery in Oakland wants to see my portfolio next month. Once I sell some pieces, we'll have enough for a deposit on an apartment. I'm done living with my mother. Done with Jessica's condescension. I want to build something with you. There are 47 more recordings, Nina said, stopping the playback. For months of promises. Text messages too. Photos, videos, complete documentation of Elliot pursuing me, lying about his marriage, promising a future he never intended to deliver. Catherine's expression had shifted from hostile to dangerous. What exactly do you want, Miss Santos? I want you to admit what you've done. The stolen money, the destroyed uniforms, the call to my employer, the ICE report, all of it. And if I do, then we negotiate compensation. $50,000 for emotional distress, hostile living environment, and discrimination I can prove with these recordings. That's extortion. That's the cost of what you've stolen from me. Or I send everything to Jessica's lawyers. I show them the pattern of Elliot's predatory behavior. I introduce evidence of you enabling him for decades, paying off his victims, covering up his failures. Nina turned to Elliot. There was a girl in Portland, wasn't there? Sarah Mitchell. Your mother told me about her. She got pregnant. You left. She tried to kill herself. Elliot's face went white. How do you? Your mother told me. She thought it would scare me into leaving. Instead, it helped me understand exactly who you are. But here's what your mother didn't tell you. Sarah had a baby. She had the abortion your mother paid for, but there was another girl before that. In college. Melissa Chin. She kept the baby. Catherine stood up abruptly. That's not true. I did research, Mrs. Walsh. Real research. Melissa Chun, sophomore year, San Francisco State. She got pregnant. You paid for the abortion $15,000, wired to a clinic in February 2003. But the medical records I found show she never went through with it. She transferred schools, had the baby, gave it up for adoption. You're lying, Catherine said, but her voice wavered. Elliot has a child he's never met, 21 years old now. And family courts look very carefully at patterns of abandoned children when evaluating custody and visitation rights. Jessica's lawyers would love this information. Elliot stared at his mother. Is this true? Do I have a kid? Shut up, Elliot. Mom, answer me. Did Melissa have a baby? I said shut up. Nina pressed forward. $50,000. You dropped the eviction. You call ICE and retract your report. You provide documentation that the anonymous complaints about my work were false. Or all of this goes public. Your son's pattern of predatory behavior. Your history of covering it up. The illegal subdivisions in this building. Your practice of targeting vulnerable immigrants and exploiting them. Catherine Walsh moved faster than Nina expected for a 67-year-old woman. She crossed to the kitchen, yanked open a drawer, and pulled out a large kitchen knife, the kind used for cutting meat, with a blade nearly 8 inches long. "You need to leave," Catherine said, pointing the knife at Nina with surprising steadiness. "Right now." Mrs. Walsh put the knife down. "You come into this country, into my building, seduce my son, and then try to blackmail me? You people think you can just take whatever you want. Well, not from me. Not from my family." Nina stood slowly, hands visible, backing toward the door. "I'm calling the police." She reached for her phone. Catherine lunged. The attack was clumsy but violent. Catherine swung the knife in a wide arc aimed at Nina's torso. Nina jerked backward, the blade catching her left forearm, opening a 3-inch gash that immediately began bleeding. Nina screamed. Elliot shouted something incoherent. Catherine drew back for another strike. Nina's hand found the lamp on the end table beside the couch, a heavy ceramic piece with an Irish landscape painted on the base. Patrick Walsh had brought it back from Cork before he died, one of Catherine's prized possessions. Nina swung it like a club. The base connected with Catherine's temple with a sound like a melon dropping on concrete. Dull, wet, definitive. Catherine's eyes went wide with surprise. The knife fell from her hand. She collapsed to the floor, blood immediately pooling beneath her head. Nina stood over her, holding the lamp, breathing hard. Her arm was bleeding, soaking through her shirt sleeve. Catherine was on the ground, unconscious, blood spreading across the hardwood floor. "You killed her," Elliot said, backing away from both women. "Oh my God! You killed her. She attacked me. You saw? She came at me with a knife. They'll never believe you." Elliot's voice was rising toward hysteria. "A Filipina tenant killing her white landlord? In this city? They'll say you came here to rob her. That the affair was a cover. That you've been stealing, lying, manipulating." Nina looked at him clearly for the first time in months. Saw exactly what he was doing. Constructing a narrative. Protecting himself. Preparing to sacrifice her. "Elliot, we need to call 911. Your mother attacked me. You witnessed it. You can testify." But Elliot was already on his phone. Not calling emergency services. Calling Jessica. "Babe, you need to come home. Something terrible happened. The tenant Nina, she attacked my mom. I tried to stop her, but yes, I'm serious. Please just come home. I need you." Nina felt something inside her go cold and clear. This was the moment. The choice point. Elliot was choosing his wife over her. Choosing his mother over truth. Choosing his own survival over her life. And if Catherine lived, she would tell her version of events. Elliot would support it. Nina would be deported, imprisoned, separated from Isabella forever. Catherine groaned. Still alive. Nina knelt beside the older woman, her nurse's training automatically assessing the injury. Head wound, significant bleeding, but likely survivable with treatment. The skull was fractured but not shattered. Catherine's breathing was steady. Pupils responsive. She would live. And if she lived, Nina would be destroyed. Nina picked up the knife Catherine had dropped. "Nina," Elliot said, still holding the phone to his ear. Jessica's voice was audible, asking questions. "Nina, what are you doing?" "Tell her the truth," Nina said. "Tell Jessica what really happened. Tell her your mother attacked me. Tell them I was defending myself." "She's threatening me now," Elliot said into the phone, his voice taking on a performative panic. "She has the knife. I think she's having some kind of breakdown. Please hurry." That's when Nina Santos understood with absolute clarity that there was no way out. No version of this story where she survived intact. The system was designed to destroy her through deportation or imprisonment or death. Elliot would betray her. Catherine would lie. Jessica would support whatever narrative preserved her divorce case. The good daughter who had left everything for America. The sacrificing mother who had worked herself into exhaustion. The hardworking immigrant who had believed in rules and justice. That woman died in Catherine Walsh's living room at midnight. Nina raised the knife and drove it into Catherine's chest, between the ribs, angled toward the heart with the precision of someone who understood anatomy. Catherine's eyes opened, confused and terrified, recognizing Nina's face above her. The second stab went into the abdomen. Catherine tried to speak, but blood filled her mouth. The third stab went into the chest again, puncturing the lung. The fourth went across the throat, ensuring silence. Catherine Walsh died in approximately 90 seconds, bleeding out on her own floor while her son watched from across the room, frozen in horror, still holding the phone. Elliot dropped the phone. Jessica's voice echoed tinnily from the speaker. "Elliot? Elliot? What's happening?" Nina stood up, covered in blood, Catherine's and her own from the arm wound. She looked at Elliot. "You're going to kill me too," he whispered. "Tell them the truth," Nina said. "Tell the police what really happened. Tell them your mother attacked me. Tell them you saw everything." "I will. I swear I will. Just, please don't." But Nina knew he was lying. She could see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice. The same tone he'd used when promising to leave Jessica, when claiming to love her, when building fantasies he never intended to make real. Elliot bolted for the door. Nina caught him in 3 steps, grabbing his shirt, spinning him around. He was taller, heavier, but soft from years of inactivity and drunk from hours at the bar. "I'm sorry," he said, hands up in surrender. "God, Nina, I'm so sorry. I loved you. I really did. You loved an idea, a fantasy, not me. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. I'll say my mother attacked you first. Self-defense. I'll make them understand. No, you won't. You'll tell them I came here to rob your mother. That the affair was manipulation. That I'm a desperate immigrant who seduced you to get a green card. I won't. I promise." "Your promises mean nothing." Nina drove the knife into Elliot Walsh's neck, severing the carotid artery with the precision her nursing training provided. Blood sprayed across the wall, across her face, across the framed childhood photos of the man who would never grow up. Elliot's hands went to his throat, trying uselessly to stop the bleeding. His eyes were wide with disbelief. That this was happening, that Nina was capable of this, that his life was ending in his mother's apartment at 38 years old, having accomplished nothing, having meant nothing. He slid down the wall, leaving a smear of blood across his second-grade class photo. The bleeding slowed as his heart gave out. He died in less than 2 minutes, staring at Nina with an expression she would remember for the rest of her life. Not hatred, not even fear, just confusion. He had never understood her, had never seen her as fully human, and he died not understanding why she had killed him. Nina picked up the phone Elliot had dropped. Jessica was still on the line. "Elliot? Elliot? I'm calling 911. Nina spoke calmly into the phone. "He can't come to the phone right now." She hung up. Nina Santos sat on Catherine Walsh's couch and waited for the police. She placed the knife on the coffee table, wiped the blood from her face with her sleeve, and stared at the 2 bodies in the living room. Her left arm was still bleeding from Catherine's attack, but she didn't try to stop it. The wound was evidence. She wasn't crying, wasn't panicking, wasn't running. The woman who might have run, the woman who had spent 3 years following rules, working herself to exhaustion, believing in the system, that woman was dead. She had died somewhere between the first stab and the fourth, between Catherine's attack and Elliot's betrayal. What remained was someone new, someone who had chosen visibility over erasure, someone who had decided that if the system was designed to destroy her anyway, she would at least control how the destruction happened. Nina looked at Isabella's photo on her phone, her daughter's face, smiling in her school uniform, unaware that her mother had just become a murderer. She typed a text message but didn't send it. "I'm sorry. I love you. I tried to build something better. I failed." She deleted it. There would be time for apologies later. Maybe, if they let her make phone calls from prison. The police arrived at 12:47 a.m., 2 patrol officers responding to Jessica's frantic 911 call. They entered the building with weapons drawn, calling out, "Police!" Is anyone here? In here, Nina said calmly. Unit 4A. The officers entered to find a scene from a nightmare. 2 bodies, blood everywhere. A small Filipino woman sitting on the couch, covered in gore, next to a large kitchen knife on the coffee table. Ma'am, are you injured? The first officer asked, weapon still raised. My arm. She attacked me with the knife. I defended myself. Who attacked you? Catherine Walsh, the woman on the floor. Then I killed her son because he was going to lie about what happened. The officers exchanged glances. One spoke into his radio calling for backup, detectives, medical examiner. The other kept his weapon trained on Nina. Ma'am, I need you to stand up slowly and put your hands where I can see them. Nina complied. They handcuffed her, read her Miranda rights in voices that suggested they'd done this 1,000 times before. She didn't resist, didn't speak. Just let them process her into the system she had tried so hard to believe in. I want a lawyer, she said, and I want to make a statement. At the station, they photographed her injuries, took her bloody clothes for evidence, gave her a prison jumpsuit that was 3 sizes too large. They put her in an interview room with a public defender, a tired-looking woman named Nina Santos, no relation, who had handled 100 cases just like this one. Ms. Santos, I'm going to be very direct with you. You've confessed to killing 2 people. The state is going to seek life without parole, possibly the death penalty given that you killed a second victim after the initial confrontation. Your best option is to cooperate fully, show remorse, and hope for a plea deal that takes the death penalty off the table. I want to make a statement, Nina repeated. Against my advice. I want to make a statement. Nina Santos sighed and called in the detectives. What followed was a confession that would be played in courtrooms, analyzed by legal scholars, and debated in think pieces about immigration, race, and violence. Nina spoke for 47 minutes without stopping. She described the affair, the promises, the systematic harassment. She detailed Catherine's campaign of destruction, the stolen money, the destroyed uniforms, the ICE report, the employment complaint. She explained the confrontation, the demand for compensation, Catherine's attack with the knife. Then she explained why she had finished killing Catherine and murdered Elliot. Catherine was still alive after I hit her with the lamp. I could have called 911, but Elliot immediately began constructing a lie. He called his wife and told her I had attacked his mother unprovoked. He said, "They'll never believe you. A Filipina tenant killing her white landlord." And I understood he was right. If Catherine lived, she would say I attacked her. Elliot would support her story. Jessica would support Elliot. I would be deported, imprisoned, separated from my daughter forever. The system would believe them because the system is designed to believe people like them over people like me. So I stabbed Catherine 4 more times to ensure she couldn't contradict my account. Then I stabbed Elliot because I realized that in this country, for someone like me, there is no justice, only punishment or escape. I chose neither. I chose refusal. The detectives listened without interruption. When Nina finished, the lead detective asked, "Do you regret it?" Nina was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the world gave me no other options. But do I regret refusing to be erased? No." The trial began in March 2024, delayed by COVID and procedural motions. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Karen Morrison, who built her case on the principle that premeditation proved malice. Nina had brought a recording device to the confrontation. She had researched Elliot's past. She had planned the leverage attempt. And most damningly, she had killed Elliot several minutes after killing Catherine. Enough time for deliberation, enough time to choose differently. The defense, led by a pro bono team from immigrant rights organizations, argued systematic abuse and temporary insanity. They brought in witnesses, other tenants who confirmed Catherine's harassment, Sarah Mitchell from Portland who described Elliot's pattern of predation, immigration lawyers who explained how weaponized ICE reports destroyed lives. The media coverage was relentless. Hashtag Justice for Nina trended alongside hashtag Deport Filipino Criminals. In Manila, Isabela Santos, now 14 years old, watched her mother's trial on international news and wrote letters asking questions Nina couldn't answer. Jessica Walsh gave interviews portraying Elliot as a victim of a fatal attraction scenario. She had already sold the condo where Elliot died and married Marcus Chen in a small ceremony that the press described as moving forward after tragedy. The jury deliberated for 6 days. They convicted Nina of second-degree murder for Catherine Walsh, acknowledging the initial self-defense but condemning the completion of the killing. They convicted her of first-degree murder for Elliot Walsh. The time gap between deaths proved premeditation. The sentencing hearing was brief. 40 years to life. Eligible for parole in 2060, when Nina would be 76 years old. In prison, Nina transformed. She studied law, helped other inmates with immigration cases, corresponded with advocacy organizations. She wrote a letter to Isabella on the 7th anniversary of the murders that attempted to explain the unexplainable. You ask if I regret it. I regret believing that suffering in silence was noble. I regret thinking that if I worked hard enough, this country would recognize my humanity. I regret leaving you to chase a dream designed to destroy me. But do I regret killing them? No. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the world gave me no other options that night. But I do not regret refusing to be erased. Westridge Towers was sold, renovated, converted into luxury apartments renting for $3,000 per month. Unit 4B, the storage room where Nina had lived and loved and planned murder, now houses Adiz Okonkwo, a nurse from Nigeria who works doubles at the same facility Nina worked at, sends money home to 3 children, and dreams of bringing them to America. Late at night, Adiz swears she hears a woman's voice speaking a language she doesn't understand, saying words that sound like, Tama na, enough, no more. She checks the fire escape. Nobody is there. Just the city, indifferent and cold, selling the same dream to the next generation of women it will consume.